Welcome back to another episode of Torque. Well, today we're going to work on my Silverado and we're going to do 5 improvements to it. So let's head out to the barn and get to work. Alright, so today we're going to work on our 2018 Silverado. It's got about 70,000 miles on it. I was seriously considering selling this truck just for the fact it's got the 8-speed, and I've heard so many horrible stories, but we did replace the oil, transmission fluid oil, about 2 years ago. Went to synthetic. It helped out a lot with the shifting. It resolved a lot of the problems. So we're going to go ahead and keep this truck, and I'm going to go ahead and change out the fluid again. I'm going to go to AMSOIL. I just feel like it's a better product. I love this stuff, but that's not one of the 5 things that we're covering today. The first thing that we're going to do to the truck is we're going to change out and go to Superior Solutions and go to this bypass valve kit, which will supposedly lower the temperature by 20%. A lot of times I pull trailers, so I think that this will help out quite a bit. You will have to buy the gasket for that, and I'm not going to go in detail on these 5 things on how to replace them, but I am going to give you cost, part numbers, and I will tell you how difficult it was to do. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, being on the lift, this thing is completely accessible. Right here, there's our bypass valve. So let's go ahead and take this out. We'll swap over everything, get it back in, and we'll move on to the next item. All right, let's get this thing back in. All right, so putting this thing in, out of 5 stars for difficulty, I would give this a 2. Pretty simple, easy to get to. I was able to easily get to the bolt that actually mounted everything onto the side of the transmission. So pretty easy, well worth the effort, especially if it drops our transmission temperature by 20%. All right, so the second thing we're going to do to this truck is we're going to install a drain plug in that transmission pan. So I'm going to do that while I'm changing out all the fluid. This is $11.49. I got it on Summit, and I'll put the information in the description. All right, so we got the transmission pan off, and to me this looks outstanding because the fluid is nice and red. It's translucent. It looks really good. Everything on the magnet so far that I've seen is really fine. There's nothing large on those magnets at all. I was able to use, and yes, that is a bed pan, and no, for the guys at work, it's not used. And it actually shows me that I have 6 liters of fluid in there. So we'll go ahead and put a little bit more than 6 liters back in and drain off the excess, and we should be good. So let's go ahead and weld in that new drain plug. All right, so we've got the oil pan all cleaned up. I've got it marked exactly where I want to put this drain. The oil filter for the transmission, it actually goes right here. It stops about where this hump is at. So there's a little bit of room up above, and then also the exhaust is about right here. So this puts it right in the center, and it seems to be the lowest portion of the pan. So we're going to go ahead and drill this up. We'll set this in place, and then we're going to TIG weld this. All right, so we've got this fully TIGged in, and we got really good penetration on it. So we're going to go ahead and install that, and that completes number 2. All right, for difficulty, I'll give this a 3 out of 5, and part of it has to do with that you have to actually weld in that drain plug. Also, if you're working on the ground, it makes it a lot more difficult. So definitely, I'd say 3 out of 5. So let's go ahead and move on to number 3. All right, for number 3, my truck did not come with a dipstick. So I went ahead and purchased this B&M dipstick kit. Now I thought this was pretty spendy. This was $236. This is the only kit that I really saw out there. So let's go ahead and see how tough it is to install this. Okay, so routing for this, you can see that we want to go to the right side of the your air conditioning lines in back of this harness, and we will probably mount this right here. So I'll have to zip tie a couple things together just so they don't chafe, which should be all right, and then we'll probably mount that right there. Let's go ahead and take a look underneath. All right, so underneath you can see this just pushes right in. You just have to put a little oil, something onto those O-rings, but you can see it snake around. You can see that this is where a couple pieces of body are actually spot welded together. It actually goes underneath that right by the corner and then wraps around to the top. All right, so the dipstick, it's a great piece. The one thing that kind of scares me about is that normally when you have a dipstick, you have the dipstick going into the transmission. There's always a mount up by the exhaust so that when the engine, when it's sitting there torquing, your dipstick isn't moving around inside the pan, and then you could possibly create a leak. This thing was designed very well, and who knows, it may work where it doesn't leak, but it just kind of scares me. So I made a little bracket, and you can see this is pretty simple. Just welded on a little angle onto that, and I'll show you what I'm going to do with it. Is that this will actually go right here, and you have your shield that goes right here. I have a clamp that's right here on the braided line that I'll bolt on, and then that way this won't move at all. It won't twist one way or another, and it should hold it in place pretty good. So let's go ahead and put this together. All right, so this side cover that goes on will actually go below this. It has a nut plate built in on this. So you're supposed to check, get this exactly where it's supposed to go. And I've got about 1/4 of an inch from the edge here up to the dipstick. So I should be good right there. So I can go ahead and put this back together. All right, so we got the heat shield back on. We've got about still 1/4 inch gap from that into the dipstick. Brackets not interfering with anything, so we're good to go. Okay, we're gonna try and get this screwed into the firewall. They give 3 self-tapping screws that we're gonna use. One thing that I did notice is that if you push it down just a little bit, it tries to bend against the firewall and away from your exhaust and everything. So you may want to push it down just a little bit and stay on this this mat that's up against the firewall. So we'll stay right up against that, and I think that's the best position we're going to get. So let's go ahead and see if we can't get this installed. All right, there you go. Let's go ahead and put the dipstick back in. Now we're gonna have to measure for that dipstick. Yeah, we're gonna do that a little bit later time. All right, we've got it all installed. You can notice that it's skewed just a little bit, and that the reason being is just so it stays away from the exhaust and hugs against that firewall. We want to try and get it away from as much heat as possible. Now I would give this installation, this would probably a 1 out of 5. It's pretty simple, but since we put that bracket on, I would definitely say it's 2. Now if you're not going to use the bracket, yeah, it's pretty easy installation. All right, so the 4th thing on my list that I want to do to the truck is I want to install this J&L oil separator. This is going to help keep our engine a little bit cleaner, not recirculating that oil that's coming off of the PCV valve. It looks like it's pretty easy installation. I'll let you guys know in a minute. All right, so this J&L oil separator is pretty simple installation. I did take out the air box. You have to gain access to this hose, which is right by the throttle body. And that button is really easy to get to. You have to press down on this button and you're able to pull out. The one in the back is pretty difficult to get to. Now I'll put a link in there for the video itself, and it says you can actually twist this around to get a better better angle to push on this, I wasn't able to do this. I had to actually use a 90-degree tool and actually press on that. That's the hardest thing I've had to encounter so far with removing this line. So I'm going to go ahead. I've got this already mounted with the bracket. It's pretty simple installation. The right side will actually go to by the intake, the throttle body. That's the dirty air side, and then you'll actually have this, which will route underneath and connect back to the same place that this connected in the back. All right, so installation of it, it went really quick. The back connection connected really easy, just because you're just pushing it on. The front one's easy to get to. So overall, I would rate this at 1 out of 5 for difficulty. Pretty simple, pretty easy to put back the air box. So let's go ahead and move on to the next one. All right, so I saved the best for last. This has been the bane of my existence with this truck, and that is the rear end. The rear end clunks when I go in and out the driveway. We have a stone driveway, and you know, when this articulates, I hear it clunking. Of course, I took it into the dealership 3 times when it's still under warranty, and they said that was normal. Last time, mechanic came out and shook the truck. You could hear a clunking sound, and he said it was the C-clips in the rear end. I absolutely don't believe that. So I started watching videos and found some guys that were taking bicycle tires and splitting them open. They were putting like 4 layers in between this first and second leaf, and it was quieting it down or eliminating it. So knowing me, I you know, want to build a better mousetrap. So I think I found an answer, and I'll show you guys. All right, so I got onto Amazon and I found this 4-inch wide, 1/4-inch thick rubber. So I'm going to cut out some sections of this, but I want to be able to clamp it on to the leaf spring so it won't move, and I'll be able to use some zip ties to hold it in place. I did see something on the internet that is very close to what I want to do, but he only zip ties it on one end, and I don't want to have to worry about it walking, so I'm going to do it on both. So let me show you. I'm going to draw on this and show you guys exactly what I want to do. All right, so you can see what I'm going to do is actually cut this out, cut these sections out. I'm going to use a hole punch some holes there, and the leaf spring itself is 2.5 inches wide, and that way I'll be able to put zip ties going up and over. Now this roll itself costs $57. That kit that someone has that actually has just 2 locations to hold it in place, I think it was like 43. This thing's like 10 feet long, and I always love keeping stuff for other purposes, and I can definitely use some pads to isolate between the floor and my air compressor on the feet. So, or if you have another buddy that has one of these trucks, to make one of them a set of these. So let's go ahead and cut this out and see how it works. Now, it only took me a minute to make. I have to punch out these holes. We'll figure out a way to do that, and then we should be good. All right, to punch out these holes, I took an old piece of tubing. I chamfered the end so it's nice and sharp, and it works just perfect. There we go. Pretty nice. So I've got to make 3 more of these. And then we'll install it. All right, so it took me about 15 minutes, and I was able to make 2 sets of these. One set's going to go to somebody at work that actually has the same year truck as I do, see if it can fix his problem as well. So let's go ahead and install a set. All right, so I've got a pry bar. I'm going to go ahead and pry into this thing a little bit. we go, that's set in place. Let's go ahead and do the front. There we go, pretty easy. So I'm gonna go ahead and run some zip ties across this, and then I'll go do the other side. I'm not gonna really pull on this that hard, just for the fact that that rubber, I don't know how soft it is or if it's gonna break. So I've just got it so it wraps up the sides a little bit. That should hold it in place. All right, so I've got all 4 pieces of rubber in there, got them cinched down. Make sure you don't cinch them down too tight with that with the zip ties. Ask me how I know. But definitely a 1 on the 1 to 5 scale on difficulty. Really easy to do. Hopefully it takes care of the problem, and I'll let you guys know at a later date if I have any issues. All right, so that pretty much wraps it up for the 5 improvements I think are definitely worthwhile for your truck, especially if you're keeping it. So other than that, I hope you enjoyed the video, I hope you learned something, and I hope to see you on another episode of Torqued. All right, so I want to give you a little update as to a couple of the improvements that we did. So the Superior Solutions, I previously at about 25 degrees, I was running about 116 degrees on that transmission fluid temperature. Last week, I went on 3 one-hour road trips, and each one I was averaging at about 102 degrees. So it was a 14-degree drop when it was, you know, a little over 20 degrees warmer outside. So they're probably really close with 20% decrease in temperature. Now, also the rubber pieces that I actually put in between on the leaf springs, it eliminated all that clunking noise. I wish I would have done it a long time ago. So I hope this information helps you guys. With that, I hope you guys enjoyed watching, and I hope to see you on another episode of Torqued.